let's get to this big picture. I wanted to throw this in here, get us more of a national perspective on college football. I know you watch a lot of games throughout the weekend, as do I. And I feel like this is a typical exercise people are going through, but this is a good one that I think we should go through. Is next time we tape, we'll have the CFP rankings out. So I wanted to get your top six as it stands right now. Now you are a guy who likes to do this pods bullshit. This is not a pods exercise. So let's just get out of that mentality right now. You got to give me 1 through 6. It's got to be numbered. They've got to be ranked out. I want to
Wait,
hear what you
wait,
got.
wait. Can we go no particular order?
No, we have to go in a particular order.
I mean,
I mean, how are we going to rank a top six without going in? You can't pod these guys out, man. Like you can explain it to me in your ranking that, hey, I think these teams are extremely close. Any of these teams could win a title, but you have to put
okay,
them
all right,
one
all
through
right, all right.
six.
Okay, fair enough. All right, so right now, 1 through 6, everything shakes out. Everything stays the same through this weekend. I got Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Tennessee, Clemson, TCU, and then I have Bama and Oregon on the outside looking in.
It's very interesting.
I don't think you can punish a team for being undefeated.
I'm going to do just
Obviously,
that. And then
obviously, the Georgia and the Tennessee team are one of them is going to be not be undefeated. So,
yep. I'm gonna do the exact thing that you said that I cannot do, but then I'm gonna turn it around and I'm also going to make a point here about why what I'm doing is stupid. So bear with me here. But I've got Georgia in that number one spot, and reigning national champs, have they looked as sharp as can be all year long? Not necessarily. Do I know that they're a really good football team and I don't have a reason to knock them out of that number one spot? Absolutely. You mentioned that they're getting ready to play Tennessee here in a couple of weeks. This is going to change things, obviously. I don't think it's going to, unless one of the teams absolutely gets run out of the stadium, it's not going to change my opinion of either team a bunch. And I think that either team is worthy of being in the playoff, regardless of the outcome of that specific game. Number two, I've got Ohio State in there. They deserve to be in this spot. You can flip on the tape and watch these guys, even though they haven't played anybody. They're really good. And the haven't played anybody thing, it chaps my ass a little bit because it's not that Ohio State hasn't tried to play teams. Like they scheduled Notre Dame, which was aggressive. Notre Dame didn't hold up their end of the bargain. Their crossover games were against Wisconsin and Iowa so far. Those teams have not held up their end of the bargain. They played Michigan State already. That's a team who has not held up their end of the bargain this year. It's not Ohio State's fault that their schedule's ass cheeks. Like it
right.
is, just the way that it's shaked out. Tennessee's in my 3 spot. What they showed me against Alabama, I think, stands out because they have an offense that can win a title. They have a defense that can also rat fuck them at the end of the year. Number 4, I'm going with Michigan. And this is a team to me that is extremely high end. I'm concerned with the way that they have not opened the offense up totally yet. I don't think what they're doing on offense is going to win them a title. I think once we see JJ McCarthy really get the reins, that can win them a title. And then I've got TCU in the 5 spot. TCU has decided to make games very interesting at times, but they've gone out and they've won football games. I love what they're doing right now. It's undefeated team in a conference that I think is very competitive. Whether that conference is super high end at the top, I mean, we can make that argument, but top to bottom, I think there are a lot of teams that give challenges on Saturdays. And then at 6, I've got Bama. Them losing to that Tennessee team, to me, like you got to knock them for the loss. I also think that Tennessee team is very good. And I think that Bryce Young and Jahmyr Gibbs are guys who you can hang your hat on as, legit players. Now, I left Clemson out of the mix. And here is why. Is to me, Clemson's schedule does not excite me very much. I don't think that the teams that they have played that have had rankings next to them have really lived up to what they were supposed to be. I think a lot of those teams early on were ranked based off of what they did a year ago. And as we've seen the teams unfold, it hasn't really been like that. They got a big win over Syracuse. I'm not going to knock that win at all. But I will say that they have a quarterback issue that is glaring, and that Syracuse team probably should have ended up with a dub in that game. And also, as I look down the schedule, like nothing excites me. So here's the situation. I said we should knock Ohio State for their schedule, but I'm knocking Clemson for the exact same thing. The reason why I feel confident in doing this is Ohio State's got Penn State coming up, which is going to be a big one. And then they've got Michigan coming up, which is going to be a big one. So they handle their business. Their schedule all of a sudden becomes a lot better. I look down the line for Clemson. They've got dog shit on their schedule the rest of the way out. And I just haven't been overly impressed by the way that they've won games. Like, I think Ohio State has been fully dominant.
I know, but here's the thing, though, dude. It's Clemson. And for the same reason that they have a historical bias, if Clemson runs the table and wins the ACC,
we're putting them in off of history then.
But I mean, realistically speaking, like, isn't that kind of how we kind of do things?
Yeah, but should we do that though?
I mean, I don't necessarily agree with it, but what I'm saying is like, let's say Tennessee beats Georgia. The only way two SEC teams get in my opinion, is if Tennessee beats Georgia and then Alabama beats Tennessee in the SEC championship game. It's the only way two SEC teams get in. Other than that, there's only one SEC team. One Big Ten team is going to come in. It's going to be Ohio State or Michigan, right? So those are two spots gone. So that leaves, if Clemson runs the table, how do you not put Clemson in? And then if TCU runs the table, okay. And then if Oregon messes around and wins the Pac-12 with their only loss being to Georgia, who could be the lone representative in week 1 of the SEC, conference champion, like, you got to throw them in there. That's why the 4 to me is really, really tough. And I think there's so many different ways that it plays out. And I agree with you. I mean, it's hard, but I just feel like it's going to be really hard to not, if Clemson runs the table, to say, nah, like, you guys win it. You win your ACC championship. You run the table. Like, you guys can't come to the table.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that at all. And it is what's interesting to me is I've been anti-expansion because I didn't think college football was this competitive. And then this year, really last year too, kind of opened my eyes to a little bit more parity in the sport. So yeah, we're at an inflection point right now. We certainly need expansion, but you're not going to tell me that Clemson, based off of the way that they have looks like a playoff team. And even if they win a conference title, that they deserve to be in there, even to me, over some of these one-loss teams. Like, this is where the strength of schedule thing to me is bullshit, is like in a team from the SEC, or just by nature of Ohio State and Michigan having to play, like, the strength of schedule to me, like, nobody would have played a top 4 team outside of the 2 teams from the SEC and the 2 teams in the Big Ten. And we're going to knock one of those teams for losing. And then here's where the Big Ten low key is screwing one of their teams. Like, so Michigan will beat Illinois probably during the regular season, and then they could lose to Ohio State, be 11-1, and Illinois is going to be in Indianapolis potentially. And you're like, dude, we already beat that team. Like, why should they have a shot at winning the conference? So
yeah,
the moral
I agree
with
you. I know where you're getting at, but I agree with you. Yeah,
is if we're saying strength of schedule should matter, and you in your conference, you're Georgia, and you got to play a top 3 team, and you're Tennessee, and you got to play Georgia and Alabama, and you end up losing one of those games, and you find yourself on the outside of this playoff picture looking in, and you look at Clemson, who has played dog shit, and they won't touch a team close to any of those all regular season, and they ran the table. If strength of schedule matters, then we are going to look at the Georgias, the Tennessees, the Bamas, the Ohio States, and the Michigan of the world differently than we're looking at Clemson in their weak ass schedule.
And that's the funny thing is I asked George Whitfield this because I knew he had some guys that were in the college football playoff committee. I just asked him. I was like, hey man, like, what are they judging on? Is it when you turn on the tape, what it does? Is it strength of schedule? Is it historic? Like, he said, it's, for the most part, it's eye test. Like, it's like, can it be eye test? Can it, what do they see? And I agree with that argument. But then the hard part is like, you and me being football guys and having been there, like, whose eye, right?
Yeah, there's not enough football people sitting in that room for the eye test for me.
To whose eye? And that's my question is like, listen, man, because I completely agree with you. Like, I think that there's a legitimate case to be made. Now, granted, this Michigan team did get into the college football playoff last year and got fucking smoked.
They
right?
did, but I
But
think Clemson gets in this year and they get fucking smoked, and they've gotten in the playoff and been smoked before. Hey, everybody's
I
been
agree with
smoked
you.
in the playoff.
I agree with you, but Clemson's also played in a dog shit ACC, ran the shit in the ACC, and then got in there, had a couple close ones, got in there and beat Bama.
Don't
So
disagree, but
there's so
I
much
don't
up and
think
down.
that they got the same quarterback
It's not
that they
even the
beat Bama
quarterback.
with.
They don't have the same. They don't have the same roster. They don't even have the same receivers. They don't. They don't.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I've watched this Clemson team way too damn much. I completely agree with you. But what I do think is there's a case to be made where the four best teams in the country could be two teams from the SEC and two teams from the Big Ten. When all things are said and done, I think you can make that argument. But I think ultimately it's going to be really, really freaking hard because at the end of the day, last year there was enough chaos, and there's still chaos to be had, right? There's TCU still has to play Kansas State, Texas. Oregon still has to play SC, I think, and someone else. They still have to beat a couple tests, maybe Utah. Clemson, they still got to beat a South Carolina team who just beat A&M. And, beating A&M's not much anymore now, but South Carolina's a decent football team.
South Carolina could be a top 15 team by the time that game rolls around, and they would have a legit shot at beating Clemson. Like, I agree with you. That's a test there. But, like, even if they beat a top 15 team, they still would not have beaten a team that is a playoff team.
Right. Listen, I get it. But my point being is we haven't had this last year. Like last year, Pitt had a loss, right? They won the ACC, but they had a loss. So like everyone had losses. So they could play out great. And like you could have a bunch of one-loss teams and everyone's just going to be like, all right, what's the strength of schedule? But at the end of the day, this year, if you have two teams that run the shit and win their conference with no losses, two teams that do it, I think you're going to really see a lot of people looking at the College Football Playoff Committee being like, what are you guys going to do now? Because what you decide now is going to set a precedent moving forward until you guys expand.
They set the precedent already. They do what they like to do. And, I'm not going to get too upset about it. It's too early for me to be getting upset in the whole grand scheme of this playoff picture. But what I'm getting ready, what it comes down to for me is strength of schedule. I feel like if we actually give a damn about it, then we need to really give a damn about it. In saying that, I also think that it's a very overrated way to look at a team because we can, as football people at least, like we can look at Ohio State and say that they played dog shit, but they have dominated literally everybody they played. We can also look at Clemson and say they've played dog shit, and some of those games have been a little bit grittier than they ever needed to be. I'm going to leave that there.